I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that John 21 is an epilogue. It's almost like feels like the second ending to John. Because really, if you read John 20, it's kind of got it all wrapped up in a nice little bow. Jesus is resurrected. He's had some interaction with the disciples. They've done some investigation. And then it even ends with this nice kind of closing paragraph saying this was written so that you would believe. And it just feels like everything comes full circle and the gospel's over. It's a nice ending. Like I said, it's kind of like a Marvel movie. It ends, the credits roll, and if you wait long enough with the other couple of nerds in the theater who are willing to wait and watch, there's just a little bit more. There's a little added ending there. And it's usually just a quick little snippet that either gives one of the characters a little bit more closure or hints at something that's coming, hints at a future event. And our text this morning does both. Jesus shows up one more time, and he gives Peter some closure from a past mistake and hints at what is coming up, hints at his impending death, his impending martyrdom. So here they are, sitting on the shore with the resurrected Jesus, who's just cooked them breakfast. Probably a breakfast of fish, which is a little weird. I'm not here to judge, but I wouldn't eat fish for breakfast. That's a little weird. But that's what's going on here. And then it doesn't say exactly what happened here or how Jesus has this conversation with Peter. But if you look at most paintings, this whole Jesus asking if you love me 3 times, in paintings, they show him being kind of pulled to the side. He pulls him away from the other disciples. It doesn't really say which one. I like to think he actually does it in front of the disciples, that he has this conversation there publicly for all to see. And I'll kind of tell you why. I'm not saying that's how it happened, but why I think that it's why I think it happened that way. I'll share that here in a little bit. So Jesus he says, Peter, do you love me more than these? It's a funny thing with language. That could mean a lot of different things. It could, and so there's a couple of guesses at what he was saying. It could actually be as if Jesus was saying, hey, Peter, do you love me more than the other disciples do? Do you love me more than they love me? Which would be a really awkward question, right? That would be awkward if that was in public in front of all of them. And it would be more awkward if Peter was like, yes, I do. I love you more than Andrew. And frankly, I don't even know if Andrew likes you. It would be really awkward. This would feel dramatic. This would feel like, kind of feeding into that rivalry that was already there. It could be more like, hey, Peter, do you love me more than you love the other disciples? Which would kind of make sense. That's a good question. Some even think that when he says, do you love me more than these, he's actually talking about the fishing equipment. Do you love me more than these things that provide you with livelihood? Do you love me more? And maybe it's a mix of passion too. Maybe he loves fishing. Do you love me more than this? And so either way, what he's getting at and what he's saying is, how much do you love me? What comes first? Whether it's these guys, whether it's your stuff, what comes first? What is most important? He's actually asking him to measure his love for Jesus. He's giving him this rubric of how much do you love me? Do you love me more than this? Do you love me more than this? That's kind of an interesting thing to think about, measuring love. Because in some ways it seems like you either love or you don't. But there is kind of a quality to how much love, to what level of love, to the quality of love. And it's kind of a weird word in a way, because I love my son. I also love buffalo wings. They're 2 very different things, right? So there's a measure of love there. So it's kind of an interesting thing to think about. Do you love Jesus? Okay, you love him. How much? Do you love him super well, or you kind of love him like you're just not a great friend? How do you show Jesus that you love him? How do you express that love? How does your behavior and actions show that you love Jesus or love God? Or do you love him, but you aren't really expressing it? which I think is actually possible. I think it's actually possible to love people very much, but just to kind of be lost in yourself and lost in other issues, to love people and not really show it very well. But I also think that's a cop-out. You definitely can't be like, well, I love God, I'm just never going to show it ever. But yeah, how good of a job do you do at expressing your love for God? So he asks this question of Peter, and Peter answers, yes, you know I love you. And so Jesus says, okay, feed my lambs. And then he asks again, Peter, do you truly love me? Peter says, yes, again. And then he says, kind of change, and every time they're changing up the phrasing here just a little bit. Then he says, hey, tend my sheep. Tend my sheep if you love me. Then he asks a third time, do you love me? And if you look at the Greek, he's actually, this word that he's using here for love is kind of a lesser love. And it's almost like he's lowering standards. And it offends Peter. And you can kind of see why. After the third time, it's kind of like, well, it sounds like you don't believe me. Why do you keep asking? So he's getting offended. And then especially if he's kind of lowering the standard. Well, do you love me? Do you love me with this love? Okay, do you love me with this love? And so he's hurt. But I imagine over time, he eventually puts together that Jesus is doing a very loving thing for Peter here. Jesus is doing something very pastoral for Peter here. Three times, Jesus lets Peter proclaim his love and his devotion to Jesus. He was letting him rewrite his story, in a sense. He was letting him right or correct a past wrong. Because remember, Peter was the guy who swore up and down, I'll never deny the Lord. I'll never deny Jesus. But Jesus said, hey, before the rooster crows, you're going to deny me 3 times. And just as predicted, that's exactly what happened. Peter denied him to save himself. And here in this moment, Jesus is kind of letting him undo that and proclaim his love 3 times. You get to, okay, you denied me 3 times, now you can affirm me 3 times. It's actually kind of therapeutic. It's actually pretty helpful. It's pretty loving. And so some of your Bibles, depending on the translation, might have a heading above this text that Larry read. And it probably says something like, Jesus reinstates Peter. And that's not that head. All those headings, they weren't originally in there. Whatever translations, they added that stuff. But that is really what's going on here. Peter's being reinstated. Peter was probably living and dealing with this failure of knowing that he let down God. He denied Jesus. And he so badly and so harshly denied him that maybe there was a demotion. Maybe Peter felt like he was demoted in some way. And maybe in reality, he was demoted in some way. Maybe this is something all the other apostles knew well, and maybe there was a kind of some respect that Peter may have lost from these harsh denials. So mentally and spiritually and perhaps even socially, Peter's multiple denials haunted him in multiple ways. And so in this moment, Jesus is kind of letting him make it right. Sometimes with past mistakes, that's kind of part of the healing process. It's part of the reconciliation process to do something to kind of correct it, to kind of make it right. Doing what you can, if possible, to make it right. Now, that shouldn't be necessary for total forgiveness. God gives us grace, and we should sometimes be willing to extend that grace to others. But if you're willing to right the past wrong in some way, it makes forgiveness a lot easier for the person that you've hurt. And it takes the relationship in the right direction. So there is space for doing and making attempts to mend relationships and right past wrongs. And that's kind of what Jesus is allowing Peter to do here. But just as important as letting Peter kind of right these past wrongs, he gives him a job. He says, feed my sheep, take care of my people. You, Peter, can continue to be a good leader even though you denied me up and down 3 times. He's telling him, even though you messed up, even though you failed, I still have a job for you. I'm not done with you. You may think you are tainted. You may think you lost your value, but you haven't. You are still usable to me. You're still usable to others. You have an opportunity now to continue the reconciliation, to go and make it right. Go and demonstrate your love. So this isn't Jesus saying, I forgive you, but I'm going to kind of keep you at arm's length. Or I forgive you, and you can even still be kind of an apostle, but you're going to be demoted a little bit. I'm going to promote someone else into my inner circle. He's not doing that. He's not saying you're forgiven, but your value has kind of been down a notch. He's saying, I forgive you. I still have an important place for you. I still have an important role for you. And so that's why I think this is important, that he does this in front of the other apostles. Why it wasn't him pulling Peter to the side, but why it was all together in front of everyone. That's huge. Affirming people publicly is a really big deal. I think that's a very kind thing you can do for me. You know, it's nice to send encouraging texts, and it's nice to have that intimate one-on-one, hey, I'm proud of you, but it's good to brag on people in front of people. I like that because it means I mean it. It's good to, I mean, this could be passive-aggressive, but also accepting and forgiving people publicly can be powerful. As long as you're not just trying to say, look what this person did. They're so bad and I forgive them. But in some instances, that's a good way to do it. Hey, I'm mending this relationship. I'm saying I forgive you. And by doing it publicly, I'm saying I mean it. I'm not just saying that to make you feel better. I'm saying that in front of people as a way of accountability. These people are going to hold me to this. I'm saying it in front of everyone because I believe it. I'm not just saying it. I really do affirm you. I really do forgive you. And so I think, my guess is this was a public thing. And so I don't think he's breaking the fourth wall here necessarily, maybe, but I think a lot of us can relate with Peter's situation that Peter's in. I messed up. My faith isn't what it was. I feel like I haven't loved Jesus well. I feel like I've only loved him a little. And perhaps to us feeling like we're in that situation, Jesus says, it's okay. I still have use of you. You're still valuable to me. You're still usable to me, even when you messed up. So maybe you feel like you've messed up in your spiritual life and put God on the back burner, or quit caring, quit feeling. Maybe the best way to love him well again is to be, the best way to be drawn back into him is to get back on the horse. Start finding ways to allow God to use you. And that's what he's doing here. He's saying, hey, Peter, I got a job for you. You have pastoral work to do, to tend and feed my sheep. And so I think sometimes when we feel kind of far away from God, we feel like we've kind of got off the horse, we put him on the back burner, we don't feel close to him. A lot of times like, oh, I need to pray more and I need to study more. And I think that's good. I think you can do that. One of the best ways I think you're really going to connect with God and feel like you have this value is to find how you can ask God, how can you use me? Not how can I study better, not how can I pray better, how can you use me? What can I do for your kingdom? God, give me a purpose again. What is my purpose? Put me to work. I think that's a good way to get back on track. And that's what he's doing with Peter. Hey, you want to get back on track? I got a job for you. So he's given Peter some closure. He's let him redeem himself in a sense and said, I'm not done with you. But then he gives him a taste of things to come. He references this impending martyrdom. He says someone's going to take you where you don't want to go. He says you're going to stretch out your hands, which may be a reference to being stretched out on a cross, to crucifixion. There's strong tradition. It's not in the Bible, but there's strong tradition with the early church fathers who say he was not only was Peter crucified, but that he was crucified upside down because he felt he was unworthy to have the death that his Savior had. And so you can see how much the resurrection and how much this moment changed Peter. And then in the text it says that this death he has is he's going to glorify God. His death will glorify God. Wow. And so it's showing that Peter is going to have a much wilder, bolder, stronger commitment than ever. There was a time when Peter denied Jesus to escape death, but he's going to have a second chance to not deny him. And he doesn't deny him. And he ultimately pays the ultimate price, the ultimate sacrifice. But then Jesus closes this conversation with Peter by speaking these words, some of the first words he spoke in John. An invitation he gave at the beginning of John, and now he's giving it at the end. And I think he's breaking the fourth wall here. He's not just talking to Peter. He's talking to people who have studied the gospel. He's talking to people who have read through John. He's talking to future believers. He ends with, follow me. Follow me. Meaning, don't quit. Don't quit. In fact, in some ways, it almost looks like the disciples quit here, or that they thought God was done with them. Because in John 21, they go back to their day job. In John 21, they're back out fishing again. They're doing what they did before they met Jesus. And so here Jesus is saying, I'm not done with you. Your mission's not over. Just because I'm gone, you still have work to do. Don't quit. And so when he says follow me, it does mean follow me, but it means more than that. It means go and be like me. Do the things that I do. That's what he means when he says follow me. Go. The world still needs me, so the world still needs you, Peter. Your story is far from over. Follow me. So here, you can just feel him. It's an invitation to all of us, telling everyone who thinks they messed up and are unusable in some way. He says, follow me. I'm not done. Telling people who think, my heyday of following Jesus and doing good for him is kind of over. I'm not very valuable now. To people thinking that, he says, hey, follow me. I'm not done. He's telling people who think, I'm just kind of going to sit back in the pew and kind of blend in and not draw any attention to anybody. I'm kind of no use. To people that feel that way, Jesus is saying, hey, follow me. I have use of you. Or maybe there's people in here who think, I kind of paid my dues of church service. I've kind of done my part for the church, and I'm retiring of that. Maybe you're older, maybe your kids are all gone, or maybe, I think in our post-COVID world, a lot of people said that. I'm going to kind of go to sitting back, taking a back seat. I'm retiring. To people with that mindset, Jesus says, follow me. There's more to do. I have use of you. And we're missing out. The church is missing out when you choose to take a back seat, when you think you have no value, when you think you're of no worth. To those of you that feel that way, Jesus says, follow me. I have use of you. Keep going. You have more to give. So maybe some of his challenges to Peter, these are challenges to us. And so he asked Peter 3 times. When he does that, do you love me? It's kind of like, it makes you think a little bit. Wait, do I love him? What does he mean? What is he getting at? He's probing Peter's inmost reasons for loving him and for following him. And so a question we need to ask ourselves this morning is, do I really love Jesus? And why do I choose to follow him? Why am I following him? Are you motivated by love to follow him, or is it something else? Are you motivated because he first loved you? Or is it about comfort? Is it about achievement? Is it about doing what you've always done? Or, is it about wanting good for humanity? Why do you follow Jesus? Why is this valuable to you? Why is this important? Do you love me? Do you love God? Do you show it by following him? Do you love others? That's a good way to show it. You want to love God, love others. Are you obedient? Do you do what Jesus did? Following Jesus means looking into the needs of others. It means being careful and wise with words. It means caring about the people no one else cares about. It means being people of peace, people of reconciliation. And sometimes it means challenging authority. Other times it means being extremely humble. And so I want you to think about this morning. What is one thing you could do this week? One thing. We'll start there with just one thing you could do to be a better follower of Jesus. One thing you could do to just be a little bit more like him. And maybe it's starting a conversation with a person that no one else seems to care about. Maybe it's taking the first step towards forgiveness or mending a relationship. Maybe it's encouraging someone. Maybe like I think Jesus did. Maybe it's encouraging someone publicly, building somebody up. Or maybe it's finding a new way to serve or get involved in your church. What can you do? What is one thing? Be thinking about that. Be praying about that. What is one thing that I can do to follow Jesus a little more closely, to be a little bit more like him. So if you're here this morning thinking, I love God, I want to make it official, I want to give my life to Christ in baptism. Or maybe you're here and you want to be just be a better follower. If you have any need, your church family is here. And we invite you to come now as together we stand and sing.